All right. Hello, hello, guys. It's Bart Johnson here, and once again, it is Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, which means it's time for me to hop on and hang out live with you guys. So that's what we are going to do. It's good to be back. I missed last week because I was traveling again. I was in Orlando, Florida. And actually, that's a perfect segue because today we're going to be talking to a special guest who also does a lot of traveling, just like I do. So if any of you guys follow me on YouTube or any social media, you know that I travel a lot for work. It's mostly domestic, but I do some international travel. Well, while I was at NAB this year, I bumped into someone who does a lot of international travel as well, has been to some really cool places, and we're going to talk with him today. But before I bring him in, I want to let you guys know that, of course, this show is live. So if you are here in the chat, please go ahead and leave some comments. We'll both be monitoring the chat so we can answer your questions along the way. I can pull them up on the screen here. They are unfortunately looking a little bit ugly today. Where are they? Here. YouTube decided to change its CSS code on me, and I didn't have time to fix it. So it is what it is for today, but make sure to put your comments and questions there in the chat. But enough of that. I am going to go ahead and bring our guest in because he is patiently waiting there. So guys, I want to introduce you to, let me bring you up, Simon Eisenbach. Did I say that right, Simon?
You said it right.
Awesome, awesome. I realized, I was like, I don't know that I've ever pronounced his last name. So yeah, Simon is another cinematographer. I met you just at NAB at the Aperture booth, just hanging out, I believe.
It was either the Aperture, actually I think it was the Aperture booth, because were you at the dinner?
The Aperture Super Secret Film Dinner? Yeah, I was at that.
Yeah.
So it was, either way, Aperture and NAB brought us together. Yeah.
Yes.
But
yes. 100%.
Simon, you are in Utica, New York, and I actually had a project in Albany recently, and so we even got together when I was up there for that, single day that I popped up there, which was cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, so why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what you do, and then we'll get into some of your travel stuff, because I know you've got some cool stories and whatnot.
Awesome. So what I do is I am a photographer and filmmaker that I deal with like commercial, corporate, kind of typical stuff while I'm in central New York. But really what I do and what I'm passionate about is I work with small nonprofits in developing countries. So I last year did some work in DR Congo, Uganda, and Senegal. And those projects are basically where I'm going to the locations that the orgs are working and capturing footage for them filming and then creating the content that they can use for fundraising. And really what that comes into is they are able to do their fundraising faster and get more money and be able to do what they need to do and are trying to do sooner and better.
Well, hang on just 1 second, man. YouTube's being funky on me, and I'm not sure if we were streaming properly. Oh, yeah, there it is.
I see my hands moving, so I think we're okay.
Yeah, it was just being, it was like, oh, you can't preview it. I was like, oh, well, that's fantastic. But yeah, so you, like myself, are a cinematographer. You do very similar sort of work to what I do in the sense that I do a lot of corporate stuff and whatnot, at least to pay the bills and all that. But you have, like you stated, you've traveled to some really cool and really difficult places. And I know there's a lot involved in going and traveling and bringing equipment and just making, basically surviving in some places that you've been to.
Yes. The joke is that half the job is getting through the trip.
Yeah, yeah, for real. It's not easy, even just traveling, on a plane to Florida with gear is a pain, but traveling to a whole nother country and all of that. So why don't you tell me some of the coolest and maybe most difficult locations that you've been to?
So most difficult locations I've been to with filming would actually be DR Congo. I was in this village called Nebabongo, and it's a mouthful, but it was a small village so far remote in northeastern Congo that during the Civil War there was no fighting there.
Wow.
So like they didn't bother to go there. And we had to go from New York to Qatar, Qatar to Uganda, Uganda into the Congo.
Jeez.
And so it was 12 hours to Qatar, 7 hours to Uganda. Then we stayed in Uganda for 2 days, and then it was another like 5 hours of flight into the Congo. And it was like land on a grass runway, the whole 9 yards.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. So what was the project that you were working on?
So I was working with an organization called E4 Project, and basically they work to support this small hospital that is the only hospital for 270,000 people, and the head is the only real surgeon for 2 million people in this region.
Wow.
Um, and he is a Congolese guy that was trained by Americans in Gabon and then went back to his home to actually do his job. And so he runs the hospital. He also helps run clinics in and throughout the region. And his wife is actually also a doctor that took time to learn while they were in Gabon. And so she runs some malnutrition programs and other stuff like that for mothers and some other things to accompany what he's doing. Uh, Really, really cool powerhouse team that's changing the outlook in that area. And so what I was doing was I was capturing footage that the E4 project was going to use to fundraise for some various efforts that they're doing over the next few years. In year one, we did a video and they did a small campaign for like $15,000 that they needed to finish off an elementary school. When we were there, their elementary school was literally in like mud huts with grass roofs. They finished off in February a brand new brick building, tin roof, like actual desks, the whole 9 yards. Super awesome, game changer. We did some stuff for malnutrition, clean water, and an overview along with some stuff for celebrating their new pediatric building, which they just finished building. And then the long-term vision is actually going to be doing some work where they're actually going to be starting a 250-acre coffee plantation, but that is a much bigger project. They have to raise like $225,000 for that.
Wow.
So we were starting with kind of the smaller things, but in year one, they fundraised over $70,000 for the various efforts. So they were able to do a lot with what we did in that short amount of time.
Very cool. And how did you get linked up with that project? And how do you wind up connecting with? I'm sure a lot of it's probably word of mouth now since you've done so many trips. But yeah, how do you land these awesome opportunities?
Most of my work is word of mouth. Also, this one was also interesting because the people that I was working with for the org weren't at the org when I first met people that worked for the org. The guy who used to be the development director went to the same college as I did, and we actually met in the locker room after the alumni soccer game one year. And he was talking to one of my other professors that also had played soccer at the school, and we got talking about Africa, and he happened to live in Burkina Faso at one point in his life, which is a country that I'd spent a bunch of time in already, and we got talking, and then I got talking with him about stuff. This was probably 2011, so this was way before I actually did the project. So we got talking, and then my name got left in an email list with a mention that I do photo and video work. And when the new development director came in, he emailed me. He's like, hey, we need to do some stuff. We got this opportunity. Do you want to jump on board? And so that's how I ended up with the job.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, most of my stuff is word of mouth as well. Some of it comes along from my full-time job. They send me to a lot of the locations that I go to, but other stuff that I travel for is really word of mouth. And it's kind of like once you get the one project and you nail it, then they tell somebody who tells somebody who tells somebody and all that kind of stuff.
Right. And the thing with this stuff is like and it's discussions that I had with people at NAB is like hiring someone to do that kind of a job. It's literally like, can you survive the shoot? Yes, great. Now, what are your camera skills? So,
So
like, your
that's
camera
first.
work is like secondary. Yeah,
So why don't you tell me a little bit
yeah.
about
It was
what you mean by that? I mean, obviously it's kind of self-explanatory, but what are some of the difficulties and challenges that you run into working in places like that?
well, a lot. I mean, some of the places I've worked are very like sub-Saharan Africa desert, where you have 110, 120-degree heat. In 2013, I actually had a 9-volt battery melt a hole through it while it was sitting in my bag,
Really?
just because of the heat. Yeah.
Wow.
Um, then uh, you've got power, which is a whole different animal, because where we were in the Congo, it was either solar or generator, and fuel for the generator cost $22 a gallon.
Whoa.
Yeah. So not really practical. So we really had to go off of our solar. Um, then there's illness and stuff like that. So food poisoning can happen anywhere because a lot of times I'm actually eating in people's homes or like someone in the village or at wherever we're working is actually cooking for us.
Gotcha.
Um, a couple times in 2013, one of my trips, we were working with a bigger crew, so they actually brought a cook with us from the capital. But most of the time, we're in the village eating whatever someone in the village is going to cook for us. And usually, what will happen is we'll give them some money. They can go to the market and buy food,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So a lot of times it's like if you don't hear the animal get killed, you question it or
Wow.
make sure it's cooked thoroughly.
Yeah.
Um, then things like that. I have firsthand experience of getting food poisoning while in the bush.
Oh
It
man.
was miserable. Oh yeah, it was not fun. Basically, I had to always use a tripod in case I had to run and take care of certain business. Yeah, not that fun.
Not fun.
I
So yeah,
also
next
had
time people
malaria.
complain about craft services and they're like, "Oh, cookies again?" Like,
Yeah,
yeah, think of Simon here,
yeah.
food poisoning and yeah, the stuff you take for granted.
I That scarred me from eating chicken for a little bit.
Oh, it's chicken. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, it was chicken.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting because that's stuff that you really, really do take for granted. I mean,
Oh,
you're thinking
totally.
about water, you're thinking about food and all that kind of stuff. So it's yeah,
Yeah.
not usually the stuff I'm thinking about when I go on shoots. I'm like, how many batteries do I have? Like, how many media
Right.
cards do I have? All that kind of
Well,
stuff.
that's a whole different.
I know that's in there
That's
too, but
stuff that you deal with before, but it's also getting in and out of the countries. So, and you and I have had this discussion offline many a time where it's like you like big cameras. I like to be as small as possible,
yeah,
and a lot of times I travel looking like a tourist. So I can get in and out of countries and I can move in the country faster and more efficiently that I wouldn't have been able to do if I was carrying a big rig like a Red or something like that. And I mean, even where I was in the Congo, I would never be able to shoot Red because we wouldn't have been able to charge the batteries that we would have needed to run the Red.
yeah, very true. Yeah, we we were always joking about that. I think we were even just talking about that yesterday, where I'm like the stuck in the past kind of guy. I'm getting better now, but being like, I'm
Yeah,
like, no, camera's supposed to be
slowly.
big and huge. But yeah, you're right. When traveling, um, you know, small cameras are better, and the fact that you can go and you just look like a tourist is a really
Right.
beneficial thing because no one's going to give you a second glance. So, for instance, I went a few years ago. I went to Brazil. I went to Rio, and I was
Yeah.
traveling with equipment, and I had a Sony FS7 with me. And I actually didn't have any troubles getting into Brazil, but I had trouble coming back through Miami. I got stopped and
Right.
asked a million different questions by U.S. Customs about why I had this equipment. Was I bringing this equipment into the United States from Brazil to sell or something like that? And of course,
Right.
I had a bunch of cameras. You know, I had a camera in my backpack, like a G or 5D I
Right.
had at that time. But yeah, that made me, you know, very questionable. And other times, when I go to other countries, I have to be considering how much equipment I am bringing, because even if I may be going there
Right.
for recreation and just shoot stuff for my YouTube channel, or I'm taking a trip, when I have a backpack full of cameras and a camera bag with stuff, but I'm telling customs that I'm there for you know, recreation and not for business, it looks
Right.
like I'm going to shoot professionally or something and make money, and so that can cause some
Right.
issues.
Right.
When I went to Portugal earlier this year, my drone was one thing that I was really worried about. And so I actually ended up buying the DJI Mavic Air, just because of its size
Yeah.
and its portability, as opposed to my Phantom, and that made a huge difference, because if I had a big case with the
Oh,
Phantom
totally.
and all that stuff, they probably would have stopped me and been like, "What are you doing?" Or I've even heard stories of them being confiscated and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the Mavic Air, I mean, it slipped into my backpack. It was a tiny little thing. Nobody cared. And so that's something to consider, you know, the size of your gear and what you need for traveling and all that. And guys, if you do want to see what I thought of the Mavic Air, I did a show right after I came back from Portugal talking about that. So I'll put a link down in the description down below. And speaking of the
Yeah.
description down below, I want to say this because I didn't do it for you at the start. If you guys want to check out Simon's work and follow him and all his info is down in the description below. So make sure to not only subscribe to me and check my stuff out, but check Simon's stuff out too. So there you go, plugs for both of
Awesome.
us right
Awesome.
there.
Yeah.
I see we've
The
got Jay in the
Mavic,
chat. So what's up, Jay? Just wanted to say hi real quick there. But yeah, and
the
guys, if any of the
Mavic's
rest of you are in
actually
there,
a
please feel free.
incredible thing. Oh.
No, you're good.
Oh.
Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
okay. The Mavic's actually an incredible thing. We brought two Mavic Pros to the Congo with us last year, and part of that's redundancy. So like if one of them failed, we still were able to fly. Um, but it's one that's game changer because it's so small, and if you pack it down and take the blades off, it doesn't look like a drone.
Yeah,
So when we were going through customs in Uganda, they didn't question anything with that. The nice part was in the Congo, we actually left our carry-ons on the plane, so we didn't have to worry about it. We just had to try and explain why there was tripods and that kind of stuff in our bags,
gotcha.
in our checked bags.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so what kind of tripods do you usually use? I assume you're not bringing the old giant Bogan Manfrottos and stuff.
It depends on the project. When I was in DR Congo, we brought one bigger tripod because we also brought my Light Pro Gear crane, and the Light Pro Gear needs a little bit of heft to it, so it's one of those that I just wanted to be safe. But at the same time, I'm also using a carbon fiber. I think it's the 535.
Yeah.
That's beefy but light. But also last year when I went to Senegal, we went ultralight and I left the crane home. And I went with a Sirui like ultralight travel tripod that also what I did is I got like the level ball and then Manfrotto 500 AH or whatever that one is, the little guy.
Yeah, I have one of those.
So and then I'll usually take a ball head photo tripod as my B tripod. So that's usually where I go. I'm in the process of working towards more lightweight stuff, and I've been talking with Sirui about what of their kit would be able to collapse nicely, because I'm trying to get it where I'm more and more compact. When I went to Senegal, I had everything in a 24-inch check bag and then two carry-ons.
Wow.
So I'm able to be super, super low profile in and out where people don't even realize what's actually there.
Yeah. And that's not being sketchy or shady. It just makes your job easier to do.
No.
But so
No, well, going along that same line is like the less gear that I'm hauling there is the less gear that I have to think about using. So I know that what I'm using and what I have is what's going to let me get the job done.
yeah,
And
very
it's
true.
not questioning too many things. That being said, I also do have the redundancies for if something breaks, I can still get what I need with like a focal length or that kind of thing. But I have like this is what I need.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I mean, that's good practice for your essentials for anything, anywhere you travel. Wedding photographers usually have backup camera bodies because if one breaks, they still got to do
Right.
it. I always bring double the number of batteries and double the number of media cards that I think I'm going to need because if something goes wrong, I need those. Now, obviously, I'm not bringing like 2 Ursa Minis with me or anything like that. That'd be awesome.
Right.
But yeah, especially for you, you go and it's a process to get out to where you're going. And so when you're there,
Yeah.
if something breaks, you got to have your plan B. So that's a really good point. And
Yeah.
stuff being small.
There's no such thing as shipping something in.
Yeah, you can't call B&H and have them overnight it to Senegal for you. That doesn't happen.
Right. No. Actually, before I touched a camera seriously, I was in Burkina Faso in 2007, and I was with my dad, and he forgot the battery charger for this little point and shoot camera we had,
Hmm.
and he was like, "Oh, I'll just have the office ship it over." And we weren't in the capital, and DHL, it cost like $100 to get this charger over there, and I'm talking like charger like that big,
For a point and
like
shoot.
tiny little thing.
Yeah.
Yep. And it never even got to us until we got back to the guest house in the capital.
So it was a moot point anyway.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
literally useless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was this before cell phones had quality video and photo?
Yes.
I would hope so.
I mean, that was the Moto Razr years
Oh, okay. There you go. So
and
it
like
started.
early Blackberries. Yeah.
Yeah. So
But you were getting
no
there.
iPhones shooting 4K or anything.
I think it was right around when iPhone 1 got released.
Nice. So actually, that's a question I have for you. Do you ever use your phone for supplemental footage or photos or anything like that while you're out?
Usually it's behind the scenes.
Gotcha.
I carry an RX 100
Okay.
with me. So that's usually my supplemental, always like if we're going out to dinner, I'll always keep the RX 100 on me, that kind of stuff. Because I actually have that picture profiled to match all of my other cameras.
Hmm.
So that's one nice thing about being all Sony is all of my cameras like the color setups match.
Yeah.
So that way it's easy for me to grade a RX 100 to my FS5,
Yeah.
and I've done it.
Yeah.
I did a lot of that in Senegal where I was almost using the RX 100 as like an action camera,
Yeah.
which is funny to think about.
Well, you can get the new RX Zero, which sort of is an action camera, except not at all.
It's right. It's durable like an action camera, but doesn't have the field of view
Yeah.
that the average action camera does.
So let me ask you this, because I'm sure people will be interested. You just alluded to it a little bit, but what are the cameras that you personally own and take and use?
So I own a Sony FS5, Sony A7R3, Sony A7S2, Sony RX100 Mark V.
All right.
Uh, yeah, down the roster. That being said, I wasn't always all Sony. I actually just moved to full Sony this year. I was previously Nikon, and I was using the Nikon D750, D600, and prior to that D7000.
Okay.
So that's where I started. When I picked up a camera for the first time my senior year of college, it was a Nikon D40.
Nikon, coming from Nikon.
So that's well, the Nikon to Sony switch was because Nikon just sucked at putting out video equipment.
Yeah. They've gotten better now, but yeah.
Well, but even now, it's just in the last 6 months that they've really taken video seriously.
Yeah, and it's more of a catch-up move rather than advancing ahead of the other company's move.
Right. Right, and it's literally like, I mean, and this isn't to knock Nikon. They're doing the best they can with what they got right now,
Yeah.
but literally their filmmaker kit is output from your D850 to a Tomos.
Oh my gosh, I saw that thing. It comes
Yeah,
in like a
and
custom
I'm
like
like,
case and everything.
yeah, and I'm literally just like, hey, that's too much stuff. Like, I can't bring an Atomos with me. I've gotten some really good stuff with my Nikon cameras, but at the same time, I want to be able to record whatever and not have to worry about it. Sorry, puppy dog. Uh, the but it's one of those that's where the move to Sony was going to happen. I've been shooting Sony for video since 2016. When I literally picked up the FS5 when it first came out.
Hmm.
I was like, this is the form factor I want. This is the capabilities I want out of a camera, and this is what I want to be able to do. Then I picked up the A7S, but I'd been lens adapting lenses because I wanted to see what Nikon was going to do. And then when they weren't doing anything, and then the A7R3 came out, and I was like, well, I guess I'm doing it. And I that was announced right before PDN Photo Plus last year. Have you ever been to Photo Plus?
I have not. The only show I've ever been to is NAB, and I want to go
Gotcha.
to more, but time and money means I basically can only get myself to one show a year.
I understand. Photo Plus happens in New York in the fall,
Hmm.
and it's photo, but they also do talk a lot about video because of the fact that the industries are coming together.
Yeah.
And they, I got talking with Chris Burkhardt at Photo Plus, and he's like, the Sonys will just make your life so much easier, and the uh, the jump. I was talking to one of the Sony Pro Services people while I was there, and they actually loaned me for the Senegal project an A7R2 70 to 200 2.8 and a 24 to 70 2.8. And after Senegal being completely Sony, I was like, all right, we're making the jump, and started selling off my Nikon gear.
Gotcha. So Safe House Studios just joined us in the chat there, and he was saying that he was half Sony and half Canon, but he jumped in on all Canon because of autofocus on the C300 Mark II. Have you ever used and shot on Canon and some of like the like C100s? Because I mean their body is pretty small as well, like very similar to an FS5 size, and the lenses are probably the same size. Because I'm assuming you're using full frame or Super 35 lenses for all of yours.
Correct.
Probably full frame
I
since you
buy
have those
all full
A7s.
frames.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
still have big
I buy all
lenses.
the full frame, so it's the G Master, whatever's, for the most part. Um, but I looked at it, but the problem at the time was, if you look at, excuse me,
No
if you
worries.
look at the C100 Mark I to the Sony FS5, which came out around the same time,
Hmm,
the FS5 just had so much more capability because the original C100 didn't do 4K and all of that kind of stuff.
that's true.
And so, and also it doesn't, I don't even think the Canons still do 240 frames a second.
I don't
Um,
know.
and the C200 might, but I've had internal 240 frame a second slow motion since 2016.
Yeah.
And so when I looked at the specs and that kind of stuff, it was a no-brainer for me to go to the Sony because I would be able to get more out of it than uh, the Canon for
Yeah.
flexibility.
Yeah, that's a good point. There was
And
that point there when Sony was coming out with the FS7 and the FS5 that
right,
they not only put something out to compete, but they put something out that had more features than any other platform. So that's true. And while Canon may have caught up, with C300 Mark II, what are you talking? $16,000 for that thing?
right.
And it's what, $5,000 for an FS5, and I think like $8,000 or something for an FS7. Yeah,
Yeah,
I won't say it's a no-brainer because I do
right,
love Canon too. So I think we've talked about this before. I'm by no means a fanboy. I'm all over the map. I own
right.
two Canons. I own now 3 Panasonics actually, and Blackmagic. So I'm all across the board.
You and your little GHs.
Yeah, well, I got the GH5 and loved it, and now I have 2 G7s, one that I use for this show and one that's going to be my overhead downstairs. So they don't get out; they're sort of permanently mounted. But yeah, and then where was I going with that? So Sony is the one brand that I don't personally own, but at my other job, working full time for the company in London, we only shoot Sony. So I'm shooting FS7s and FS5s. So I've used absolutely everything. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Sony is pretty impressive. I just never got into its ecosystem, adapting lenses and stuff like that, because I have all EF lenses, and that came from my first interchangeable lens camera being the 5D Mark III. So I have all this Canon glass. And who knows? That'll probably change in the future.
Part of not lens adapting was there's no good lens adapter for autofocus with Nikon.
It's true.
Because of the way Nikon does its autofocus, it does not adapt well to the Sonys. Excuse me. That's part of it too, was like it was just not efficient for me. And I couldn't just carry a Nikon and shoot both stills or Nikon lens on the Sony body. Jay, yes and no. I don't so the type of work I do.
I'm gonna pull Jay's question up on the screen here. There we go. Oh, look,
okay.
the chat is suddenly fixed with the CSS feed. Whatever. I don't know what's going on today. But yeah, so are you referring to Jay's owning equipment question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So where I'm located, there's no such thing as a rental house. So trying to get access to rental gear would involve either driving to New York City or Boston or shipping it in from like Lens Pro to Go or Lens Rentals, that kind of thing. It would not it would just be a lot more hassle because I wouldn't actually get to prep the gear until it's already at my house, that kind of stuff. And a lot of times I'm shooting stuff in and out very quickly, short notice, that kind of thing. So it would be very tough for me to rent. And with these bigger projects overseas, it's the bigger higher end cameras that you would think of as like higher paid work, which is where people would want the Red or the Ari. Those don't let me take that kind of equipment, just because I have to be so small and compact. That being said, there are people that do similar work to what I do overseas that carry that stuff, but for my clientele with it, they don't want that. They want to be able to be lean and mean. Where I am in central New York, I do a lot of, similar to Safe House Studios, I do a bunch of construction stuff. I do a bunch of like corporate stuff where it's like, hey, perfect example, I got a phone call earlier this week. Hey, they're pouring the concrete for this light post tomorrow at X at like 3:30 in the afternoon. You need to be there and capture it. If I was renting, I would not have been able to get the gear to me to go do that shoot, whereas owning, it's just grab it off the shelf and go out the door.
Yeah, I agree. So I own my own gear and probably own even more gear than I really need. I did do a show, and I'll put a link to that one down below too. I did a show about not getting gas, which is what I call gear acquisition syndrome. So check that video out down there. But I have acquired over the years a lot of cameras, a lot of equipment, drones, cranes, lights, all sorts of stuff. And I try and make sure that I'm not making frivolous purchases, but justifying it. But yeah, the fact that I have what I need in-house is great. I do rent on some things. If there is something that a client absolutely wants that I don't own, we can add it to the bill, the rental cost. I bill through, and we can get that specific thing. But that really rarely happens. When I flew to Dallas for that big job that I did just a few weeks ago, I brought a ton of gear. It was a
You
thousand
pack a lot
dollars.
heavier for that than I do.
Yeah, it was $1,000 for luggage, and that got billed through to the client. But the thing about it is, if we had left the lights, if we had left the cameras, if we had left the heavier stuff and rented locally, it would have ended up costing more. So I actually saved the client money, you know, in the long run, if you look at it, by having my own stuff and bringing it. Another thing that I do, since I have so much gear, is I rent my gear on Kit Split. So I don't know if you do any of that, but yeah, I mean, even right now, my Ursa Mini got picked up yesterday and is on a shoot this weekend. They rented my Ursa Mini and my full cinema lens kit and everything. So even when my stuff isn't working, or meaning working on a job, it can still make me money and stuff like that. So that's a sort of a side hustle thing, you know, not directly related to owning versus renting your own gear. But the benefit is if you own it, then you can rent it out.
Right. I don't do rental because I am paranoid about my gear, and also I have such drastic changes in shoot schedule that I don't want someone to rent it and then need it for something to pop up.
Makes sense. So I don't rent anything that is like absolutely essential, like mission critical.
Right.
Like, I look at what my schedule's like, when I need cameras on stuff, and sort of put a buffer in. Like, okay, if something comes back broken, Kit Split, I'm fine because it's all covered under insurance. It'll get replaced, but I need to have myself a buffer for getting it replaced. So if I'm leaving on like Tuesday for a shoot with the Ursa Mini, I'm not going to rent it to somebody who's going to return it to me on Monday. So yeah, I got to be careful with it. And yeah, it does suck sometimes. I've never had anything come back broken, but I have had some stuff come back, you know, a little worn and whatnot. And yeah, you kind of got to get used to that and ready for it. But Kit Split's a nice thing because it does have insurance, so I am covered. They require them to provide the insurance for the amount of the equipment. So,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so they can't even rent unless they have that proof of insurance on there. So it's nice, and there's no transactions happening directly with me. Everything goes through Kit Split. They pay Kit Split for your credit card, and then just gets deposited to me. So it's actually pretty cool. I'm not necessarily plugging for Kit Split or anything, but it is a pretty cool thing. But yeah, it is scary sometimes to have your babies out there with someone you just met, but
Right. I'll let people I know borrow stuff or rent it if I know them well, but it's few and far between that actually happens.
Yeah. I'll hook friends up all the time with gear and stuff like that. You know, Safe House was just mentioning something about baggage, and he says go first class and get 4 bags. So one tip, and I've shared this on a few different things before, but I'll share it again. So I fly American Airlines, and so when I went to Dallas, I had, was it 10 or 11? I think it was 10 checked bags. All big Pelican cases and all this stuff, the biggest one of which weighed like 75 pounds. And so, yeah, it was a lot.
Were you able to do media credential rate?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to share with them. Is I had a media badge, and I don't think I have it right here. It's on my backpack somewhere. But yeah, it's just a pass. I actually designed it, had it put together, and a buddy of mine who has a print shop had it printed and laminated, and it's my media credentials. And I show that to them, and I get what's called the media rate. Where the limit is like 25 bags, up to 100 pounds per bag without any extra fees, and it's $50 per bag. Well, normally it would be compounding, and they get up to like $200 per bag. So while it was like $400 and some odd dollars each way for me to fly those cases, it was astronomically cheaper than it would have been if I hadn't used the media rate. You know what? Let me grab my media pass. I know exactly where it is, so hang on just a sec. It's right behind me.
Yeah, no, those things are lifesavers. I actually have one as well that a buddy printed up for me. It's been a lifesaver. I actually used that when I went to Senegal. It just, like Bart said, makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah, so this is mine. So it's got the company that I work for now on it. And yeah, it's just got my face before I had the beard. It just says media, and the other key thing that you need to have on there is an expiration date. So you can't just make yourself one that's good forever. They'll look at it kind of fishy. So yeah, this one is the 2018 one, and I'll get another one next year. And so it's just...
See, mine, I put owner into it, so I didn't have to do an expiration date.
Well,
because
there's
it's
a
like
good
I
tip.
own the company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even have my personal company one. Maybe I should make myself a Bart Johnson Productions one.
Safe House. Every airline has different media rules, but it's up on their website. So I know American and Delta both have it because I've dealt with it. It's just slightly different, like, stuff.
Yeah.
But most airlines do have some sort of media pass, and it makes life a whole lot easier. And it's literally like Bart was saying, like, you can make it yourself in Photoshop. Actually, the fstoppers.com has a article about this,
really?
And they've got all the information. So I'll look it up on fstoppers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
share that with me, and I'll put it in the description down below for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
Whatchamacallit. So fstoppers actually has a Photoshop template, which is what I used.
Cool.
To build mine.
Nice.
The Safe House, for me to fly first class on the kind of trips I would go, it's about $10,000 to $15,000, and my clients don't have that kind of budget.
Yeah, I would love to pay for first class everywhere, but usually I'm trying to save money. Class,
yeah.
If the client wants to pay for me to go.
If you want to hire me and fly me first class, I'm down for flying first class.
So I do get bumped up from time to time to first class because I have been flying all over the place for years now. So I do have a lot of points and status and stuff. But it is always nice. But yeah, it's not always a given. And usually clients are looking to cut costs and not
right.
Yeah.
My one thing that I do is if the flight is over 5 hours, I mandate either exit row upgrade or premium economy upgrade.
Ooh, I like that.
Because I need my leg room. Well, being 6'6",
yeah, you're a little
me
tall.
and airplanes don't get along. So I need the leg room for those longer flights. And so that's where I am all about, like, and I understand that, like, they're trying, like, we got to try and see where we can save money, but at the same time, you've got to be able to get there and be in one piece and not have to, like, go to the doctor or the chiropractor.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So let me ask you, do you usually go
ahead.
Solo? Or do you bring
it depends
people?
on the project.
Okay.
I'm trying to get where I bring at least one person with me now, due to the fact that so initially I was just going on trips and just doing what I could do myself, but now I'm really trying to focus on how I can help the nonprofits grow, which means I'm looking at their 4 to 5 year plan of how they want to be growing and what they're actually doing currently and what is available that we can capture to try and help them achieve their 4 to 5 year plan. That being said, I'm usually there for 9 to 10 days. The trips that I go on are usually 2 to 2.5 weeks, but the amount of travel time and everything, you're only really getting 8 or 9 days of usable shoot time. So I need somebody else to help me capture all that footage.
Yeah.
And in true form of doc work, you never know exactly what's going to happen until you get there. So, like, when we were in the Congo, day one, we shot, like, school, their anti-malaria program, and hospital overview. Then the next day we were doing truck and hospital again, then pediatrics. And then, like, we would go back to the school on day 3, then on day 5 we went back to truck. And so it's like, you never know when and where people are going to be available and that kind of stuff. And then a perfect example was when we were flying in, we were able to get an interview with a person that we needed a certain interview that's, like, in leadership, but he was in a city it was a 3 hour drive, or we can have the plane drop someone off. And so we actually gave the development director a Zoom H1 with a lav and a point and shoot camera and a small tripod. And he shot that interview, and then they rode him down to the hospital on a motorbike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta have boots on the
and
ground
then-
and get it done.
And then me and my second Dane actually continued on to the hospital and literally like landed, started shooting the minute we got there.
So how long do you usually stay for these things? You just mentioned like 8-9 days, so you're going for really longer trips.
Yeah. Most of my trips were on the ground for 8 or 9 days, but it's usually 14 plus with travel.
Wow.
Because for me, what I do is I drive to New York City and then fly out what's usually the next day. So I'll fly in a day or drive down a day ahead. If I'm bringing a second shooter, my seconds are usually not someone local to where I live. So I have to fly that person in. So that's going to be a day ahead of us leaving the country. I just happen to have family that lives right near JFK.
Mm-hmm.
So that's super convenient. So I have a free place to stay there. But so one day to get to the city and fly someone up if I'm taking somebody. Next day, fly out of the country. Usually it's a day and a half of travel by the time you get to the country, and then you've got about a half a day to recover normally. We got lucky going into the Congo where we had 2 days in Uganda that we just kind of used this jet lag recovery while we were waiting for the plane to be available to get us into the Congo.
Mm.
You want to pop Jay's question up?
Yeah, that's a good question that popped up there. There we go. So Jay's asking, do you guys market yourself as cinematographers or videographers, and why? So I'll let you go ahead and take it first. What do you call yourself?
So I actually market myself as a video production company. I don't market myself as an individual because I'm more of grand scope. I look at cinematographer as someone who's making feature films and that kind of thing. I know it's an ever-changing market, but that's just kind of the way that I've always viewed it. And yes, what I do is make cinematography, but at the same time, I'm looking beyond it. So I'll usually call myself a filmmaker because I think that sounds a little better than videographer. But it's not quite. I'm not a Shane Hurlbut or a Michael Bay. I'm not up to that. I don't have any desire to get there. I want to just make photo and video content that organizations are able to use to do fundraising.
Gotcha. So I usually I do the same as you. So when I'm promoting myself as Bart Johnson Productions, I promote it as video production company. But when I refer to myself personally as like my role within that company, I am the owner, producer, and cinematographer. So I do use cinematographer as opposed to videographer. And I'm not sure why. I was just thinking, like, why do I associate this? But I associate the term videographer almost like with wedding videographer. Or so it feels to me like a videographer is someone who's there just sort of capturing, while a cinematographer
like
I feel is someone who's making.
Like that.
Yeah. And I feel like a cinematographer is someone who's actively shaping and creating images, even if it is for just like a corporate video or whatever. And I feel like a videographer is someone who's there at like the company picnic and just documents the whole thing.
Yep.
I don't know why I feel like that.
Right.
I always feel like the word video is sort of like a dirty word, you know? So like, you know, it almost like insulting, like a video camera, like, oh, video camera. But I don't know why. I don't know why it's like that, for me at least. So yeah,
it's one of those things that everyone has a different opinion on it. And I just look at it as this is like the way that I want to be doing. Like, because for me, I don't have any desire to make feature films.
Yeah.
I want to be helping nonprofits in developing countries. If that means we're doing something feature length, then yes, I would still do it. But so for me, my work also goes both realms. So like a perfect example, a couple weeks ago was literally doing a live stream video for a client for a press release.
Hmm.
And I then had to do for the same client a event highlight video. Um, so that's more on like the video side. But then I also, at the same time, for the same client, at the event we were doing the capture, we had debuted a video that was this carefully crafted story talking about how the company's philanthropy and the company itself intertwine into one another. And so it's telling that story of how one led to the other, which then helps the other one grow and
Gotcha.
go back and forth between the two. So it's kind of this like weird mishmash. I'm not in one specific realm all the time,
Hmm.
but that's part of why I kind of focus company ways.
Yeah. So I come from a background of sort of narrative filmmaking. So when I was at school, Savannah College of Art and Design, I had a senior film. It was a narrative short. It's 15 minutes long and all that kind of stuff. And so that was what I enjoyed doing and what I got into. Never really wanted to go the Hollywood route though. So while a lot of people went out there
Right.
to LA and tried to carve out a niche for themselves out there, I came back home to the Northern Virginia area, and yeah, so I realized that I had to make my own sort of profession. So that's why I started my company, and so I do the corporate video stuff, I do commercial work, and I do all that stuff, and I've grown to really like it and be really good at it because I find ways to put that sort of narrative creativity into them, which makes them better, I think. But when I have the time and when I have the money, I do partner up with a lot of local directors and talented filmmakers, and we make short and we have done feature length indie productions. So I do still like
Right.
doing that, but that's not where I'm making my money, and that's not where I see myself ever
Right.
making my money. That's like, I'm one of those people where it's weird. It's my job, my hobby, and my creative outlet are basically all the same thing.
Yeah.
It's shooting stuff and
Well,
all that. So
it's funny because our backgrounds are so polar opposite.
yeah,
Because for video, I'm completely self-taught. I didn't start shooting video until 2012.
yeah,
So
that's
like
amazing, man.
I and that goes back to the discussion that you and I were having the other day of and even earlier on where it's like you come from the realm of big cameras where it was film was still heavy involved and that kind of thing. And then me, I came up through the DSLR revolution,
Hmm.
and the smaller, more compact I can always be, the better it is for me.
Yeah, it is. It is really opposite ends of the spectrum, and when I met you at NAB, and then we linked up online, and I went and checked out your stuff, and it was fantastic. But then when I came to Albany and we went and hung out, and had some beer and chicken wings there, and you told me that you had just started doing video like 6 years ago. That was blew my mind, man. Your stuff. And like I said earlier, guys, all of Simon's social media stuff and web links and everything are down in the description below. So go and check some of his stuff out. But yeah, man, I mean, you've done amazing work for self-taught and for something that you sort of fell into, and just kind of rolled with it, and now you're crushing it, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. I mean, it's the nature of the industry always changing, so it's just adapting with the change. And I absolutely love how technology's made it easier and different to tell stories, so that way I can tell every story in my own unique spin.
Yeah. So what I might do, I might have you put together like a list of some of your favorite pieces of kit that you take with you,
Yeah.
and I'll
Okay.
probably pop those down in the description below. But why don't you actually just tell us now? Do you have a few things that come with you on like every single trip that like is a lifesaver?
Cliff bars.
Cliff
Number one,
bars.
every time, no matter what, I always so for me it's one of those that like if I'm out there and you always have to eat what's put in front of you, whether you want to eat it or not. And whether I actually like it is how much I eat. And if I need that taste at home where I'm not necessarily feeling well, a Cliff Bar is like that, like not super big but super filling.
Hmm.
That's my number one.
Which flavor?
Um, It varies. I like the blueberry crisp, the chocolate brownie, and the peanut butter ones.
All right, I'm a white chocolate
But there's
macadamia nut.
also those aren't bad. I'm not a huge macadamia nut fan. But then there's another one I forget what it is. But like I always keep at least 2 Cliff Bars with me on shoots. Like that's again, it's just my go-to. So when I travel, I usually bring at least 12 or 13.
There you go.
As far as actual gear, um, it's always my whatever my like main shooter kit is. So when I was Nikon, it was the D750 24 to 120 because that is the camera lens combo I could literally pull off any shoot with. Um, so it was one of those situations that like that's what it is. That was always there. Now it's my A7R3, conveniently right
Oh,
here.
look at that. Like you planned it.
And the I had it on the table because I was emptying memory cards, and then the 24 to 105 is it's almost like the impossible lens to find right now with Sony, because they just came out with it last winter. But that combo is my favorite, because I can do anything stills, I can do anything video, wides, tights, you name it. It's super super easy to get stuff done. And then Peak Design straps. I have all of the Peak Design stuff, so that is what I use. It's super easy. So if I'm like going on to gimbal, off of gimbal, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And even then, so like I've got the 3-axis gimbal there. That doesn't always go with me. When I was in Senegal, I was using a glide cam because in many situations while I'm overseas, glide cams are easier, A, because there's no battery, and B, because it's smaller and more compact. So it's one of those that every job has a different tool that is needed. It's just a matter of what is necessary at that time.
So with the way I have you framed, we couldn't see the gimbal, but just tell them which one.
Oh, right now I'm running a Ronin M, and then the Devon Super Tramp glide cam.
Ah, very nice.
Because that is hands down the best glide cam available.
Did you get to meet him and talk to him at that Aperture dinner?
I didn't talk to him at the dinner. I talked to him on the floor with Scott
Gotcha.
Malcolm.
Yeah, I got
another buddy of mine.
I got
which
to
I need to
have
connect
dinner with him. That was
Scott.
cool.
Yeah, that's super awesome. I talked to him a little bit after dinner, but not nearly as much. I had dinner with JP Morgan.
Yeah.
And then Greg Farnham. Greg, I think it's Farnham. Hang on, I gotta look it up. Greg is like the face of Lens Pro to Go.
Gotcha. Yeah, that room was very intimidating for me. In case you guys don't know what I'm talking about, Aperture had a big super secret film dinner where they revealed their Aperture RGB. I did a vlog actually of that whole day. It was the first day at NAB, so I'll put a link to that video down in the description so you guys can check that vlog out. But yeah, it had like all the who's who from YouTube and all over the place, Corridor Digital guys, Philip Bloom, whole bunch of people, and then
I got
you and me,
Christian from Corridor too. Yeah, it was super funny. I'm just like, I feel so out of place, but like at the same time, it was like super cool to like talk to the like people that just super down to earth, awesome guys.
Yeah, I talked with Kevin from Basic Filmmaker. I talked with him quite a bit.
Nice.
And yeah, Christian and Sam from and Nick from Corridor Digital. I was talking with quite a bit. Yeah,
they're awesome guys.
It was crazy cool. I was
like
starstruck.
I mean, even like Cody and the guys from Aperture were awesome to just hang out and talk with when they're not in like full work mode.
Yeah.
Where you're just able to talk about like random stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that was such a cool, like relaxed dinner. So much fun. NAB was solid this year. This was also my first one, but like from talking to people that were there, they were like, yeah, it was solid.
It was my fourth one. It was a pretty good show. So we're coming up on an hour here, so I won't keep you too much longer. But I did come up with one other thing that I wanted to ask you. You were just saying you were offloading media and stuff. How do you handle your media offloading and redundancy or whatever when you're traveling? Because obviously, if you're gone for like 14 days, you're not home to safety, if you will, until you get back. Oh my goodness. Safe House Studios, I'm just going to pause for a sec. Safe House Studios just gave me the channel's very first super chat. That is awesome. Thank you very much, Safe House Studios. He says, great show, and have a drink on him in the future. Well, I will. I guess I'll send you your half some
So you
other
have to
time.
fly back to Albany.
Yeah, I'll
You
do.
have to fly to Albany so we can
That
have a
actually
beer.
wasn't a bad trip. Yeah, I'll shoot on up there, and we'll go get some beer and some chicken wings again. But Safe House Studios,
But
thank
if
you so much. That's awesome.
If you end up making it back up here, you got to book an extra day so you can actually come out to the studio.
Yeah, that's true. I was just a quick fly in one day, shoot the whole next day, and then fly out. So yeah, I'll have to make some more time.
Yeah. So.
But anyway, media.
Anyways, media. So I am a redundancy, like, paranoid person. So what I do is I carry 4 terabyte 2.5-inch discs, and I carry 2 of them, and they hang on, I'm just responding to Safe House.
Yeah, I was too. It's a big moment.
So that it's almost a cheering up moment.
I know.
But anyways, so I will SD cards go into the computer, then I have everything gets offloaded onto one disk, and then I will offload from the card direct to a second disk, and then they stay in separate. If we are in like a compound, so like when we were in Nebabongo, we were like in and around the hospital, like pretty much stationary. So I had one drive in each of 2 different buildings.
Okay.
And then if we're traveling, like whenever we're flying, after a shoot, one drive never leaves my pocket.
Okay, so you always have one on you.
So one is always on me, and one is always in the bag. When we came back from Congo, we actually left one with the development director, so that way it was on a separate flight.
Okay. Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah, because
so
the media is all that matters in the end, right?
Right. So it's kind of one of those that, like, whatever like safety measures I can take is what I do, and then it really, other than that, that's really all I can do. But then when I get back to the studio, it gets put back into the server and then uploaded to my cloud storage.
Yeah, I do the same.
And then as far as organization, every project, no matter domestic or overseas, it's my file structure goes. Every year gets its own folder on my server. Then in that, the first shoot day on a project, because that's the only day that's like guaranteed. Here's never going to change, because when a project starts, it can fluctuate of the exact date. So like first shoot date is the project start time. So like, and it always goes year, month, date. So like if we were doing a project today, it would be 2018-06-30 Johnson live stream if we were doing this as a project. And then inside that, if it's a multi-day shoot, I break it down. So in that folder, I would do another folder with 2018-06-30 a description about what we were capturing that day.
Okay.
Then the next day, a description about that. And then if I'm doing multi-shooter, we'd break it down by shooter, and then all of your camera cards.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So with your cards, are you one of those people who, when you shoot a card, you won't wipe it until you're done? Or do you, I mean, you probably need to wipe them, right?
I will shoot them till they're full.
Okay.
At the end of every day, I'll back up, but I will shoot the card until it's full, back up, and then check redundancies, and then I'll wipe the card.
Okay. So do you do that at all when you're still out in the field?
I run into it sometimes, because you can only carry so many SD cards.
Yeah.
It's one of those that I can only afford to buy so many 128 gig SD cards. And when we were in the Congo, my second and I were shooting about 200 gigs of data a day.
Woo.
And we were only shooting 1080p video.
Wow, just a lot of content.
Yeah, it was. Well, we were also shooting still, so it's a mix, but it's still a ton of content.
Yeah.
And then what would happen is that we were only able to shoot 1080 because of power issues. It wasn't because of storage amount; it was because of power. there wasn't enough. We weren't able to offload and back up 4K footage and be able to recharge our laptops. We literally had one laptop charge a day per laptop, and the amount of time it took to offload and back up all of our cards was 85% of the battery on a laptop.
Wow.
On a MacBook Pro.
Wow. Crazy.
So if we tried to do 4K, we would have been hosed. And like we even had the Ronin M with us, and we couldn't even use the Ronin M. So it's
yeah, craziness. All right, well, I think that was all the questions that I had popping into my mind there. I'll give it another minute or two here, see if anybody else wants to pop any questions into the chat. So if you guys do have anything, I know we've had some good chat going and a few good questions coming in along the way. So I appreciate that to you guys who have been hanging out and participating with us there. And if you guys are watching this on the replay, does he? What did he say?
I'm just curious. I'm just asking the question before we get too far out.
Yeah. But yeah, and if you guys are watching this on the live playback next time, or sorry, live playback on the playback, join us live next time, and you can hang out with us and everything like that. But yeah, man, that's really
you'll get
cool.
to hang out with Bart. I probably won't be here.
I have a feeling I will probably have you on other shows in the future. Or maybe I will even be a guest on some of your stuff. So we'll see.
I'm sure that we'll have some more interweaving at some point.
Yeah, we were already talking some potential interesting live streaming stuff before this stream went. So yeah, that'd be cool, man. I think this was great. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I think everybody else will get a lot out of your stories and tips and all that kind of stuff. Question from Jay. He says, what type of stream is happening next week? All right, he's ready. He's ready for next week. So next week, I'm not sure yet, Jay. We will be having a stream. I will be going live next Saturday. And that's July 7th, I think, right? Sounds right. 4th of July is just a few days away. That's crazy. Yeah. But yeah, we will be having a live stream. That'll be 2 days before I'm traveling to Iceland. So I have a trip coming up. I'm leaving on the 9th to go to Iceland. But I have not yet decided upon our topic for the Saturday show on the 7th yet. But stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe and click that notification bell, and you'll be the first to know what that topic is when I have it. So I'm going to go ahead and close us out then here, man. We've gone just over an hour. I really appreciate you hanging out. Always good to chat with you. I'm glad we bumped into each other randomly at the NAB show and got to hang out. But yeah, thanks again. I'm going to let you go. Once again, guys. Simon Eisenbach, all of his info is down below, so make sure you go ahead and follow him on social media, check out his work online, and all the crazy stuff that he's doing, because he's got some really cool stuff going up. All right, well, that's going to be it. I will see you guys later, and once again, thanks a lot, Simon. I will see everybody next week. Let's go ahead and close it out.
Awesome.